Chapter 9. War is declared. In the distance she felt the approach of Taka, Flicker, Kitten, and Aikiju, which meant that Tate, Mora, and the dogs had come as well. Taka immediately took the letter through the barrier, and Aikiju went with him. Flicker muttered a greeting and crawled into Dane's pack to finish his night's sleep. "It's true what the basilisk said," Tate said, sitting next to Dane. "They've cooked up some infernal broth." "Guess I had a drop of it on her hand when she cut it off," Dane replied grimly, tickling Kitten's belly. The dragon, sensing her agitation, voiced a soft run of clicks and chirrups that had always comforted Dane in the past. The girl smiled at her young charge. "I'll be all right, Kit," she whispered. Tate watched Mora as the girl, yawning, bedded down in the shelter of the rocks. "How can you speak with Taka and not Aikiju? She told us she could not hear ye, and that's very strange." Dane shook her head. "No, it's not. I can't mind speak with immortals that have some two-legger in them, only the ones who are made entirely like animals." The dogs came to lie down with Tate even as the pups, Russet, and Fleetfoot arranged themselves around Mora. For a moment both groups, separated by only a few feet of ground, stared at one another. Then Prettyfoot yawned, and Silly yawned in reply. Dane felt something relax in both clusters of shaggy bodies, and gave an inner sigh of relief. "I'd like to ask a favor," Tate said, his voice soft. "If aught's to happen in the castle, let me warn my brother so he can get the servants out. He'll make sure none of the nobles or their guests are the wiser." "You don't think someone might warn Tristan or Yolaine?" she asked, examining the silver claw at her throat. The hunter shook his head. "Nay, we accepted Milady. She's Dunlath blood, and my throat knows ye can't pick your lords, but none will back her in treason, and the outlanders she foisted on us treat us like slaves." Dane heard a soft whistle from the barrier. It was Taka, half in and half out. Getting up, she ran to him, with Tate close behind. "You may breathe easier," Taka informed them quietly. "The storm wings and Huroks are at the soldiers' camp, harrying those who would sleep. The lioness says they spend as much time battling one another as they do the mortals." "How can ye know it goes on more'n a day's ride from here?" asked Tate. "A speaking spell?" Dane asked. Taka nodded. To the man she explained, "It helps mages to speak to other mages, no matter how far off they are. They know about the blood rain and the mercenaries coming?" "Yes," the basilisk replied. "Once all may speak without interruption. Master Numa wishes you to cross the barrier. Perhaps the marmot who helped you there before will serve." Dane checked the eastern horizon. "She won't be up until dawn." "It may take that long for the harriers to break off their attack. I will return when all is secure." Taka went back to Numer. They trudged up to the stone cluster, Dane yawning until her jaw ached. "Sleep," Tate ordered. "I'll wake you when Taka says we're ready to talk." "We need a plan," Dane mumbled, "and we don't have much time." "Sleep," Tate repeated. "No one will make a plan without ye." Cloud had arrived when Taka summoned Dane at sunrise. The girl watched her pony join Rebel, then sat back to listen for Quick Munch. The marmot was glad to hear from her, and eager to serve Dane again in communicating with her friends. As they made their way from Quick Munch's burrow to Numer's camp, Dane felt a crackling tension in the past. Numer was the source. She never had seen a look on his face like the one that was there now. He radiated fury. Aikiju watched his every movement, dark green eyes wary. Taka, as impossible to read as ever, munched quietly on a small pile of rocks. When he saw Dane, Numer spoke a word. The air near him developed a sparkling blotch the size of a floor-length mirror, then opened to frame two figures Dane knew well. The smaller was a red-headed warrior in chainmail breeches and boots. Alana the lioness, the king's champion. She was cleaning a sword. The other was a mammoth a few inches shorter than Numer and much wider. Raoul of Golden Lake, knight commander of the king's own, wore plate armor over a sweat-soaked quilted tunic. Sipping from a mug, he saw the image of Numer and his cohorts before his companion. "Alana," he said, and pointed. The woman looked up, her famous violet eyes grim. "I hope you have a plan. I don't. We could retreat, but that leaves Dunlath secure and you in a bad position. Numer, you told the king Dane's news?" "Yes, but you know the problem as well as I. It will be days before more help can reach us." And maybe Tristan still put blood rain in river, Aikiju pointed out. Sir Raoul made a face. It goes with what we know of the man. Alana's eyes narrowed. Dane, is that really you inside this animal? Quickmunch nodded, but she said to Dane, I'm a marmot, not an animal. Two-leggers, Dane replied with a mental shrug. She made a note to tell her friend Alana that marmots were touchy, prideful creatures. Numer sighed. I'm afraid we must implement the plan we discussed earlier. The other two humans nodded. I do not like it, remarked Taka. Is there no other way? Alana shook her head. Dane chattered with annoyance. Was somebody going to tell her anything? An unhappy look in Numer's eyes silenced her. Dane, there is one other way to break the barrier. It means a lot of risk. Alana put her sword down. And it won't work unless your friends can draw the mages out of the castle. Dane looked at Numer, thinking, So what do I do? He was in a brown study, pressing his nose and staring into the distance. She was about to ask Quickmunch to get his attention when she thought, Can Taka hear me? He hears mortal animals. It's worth a try anyway. Reaching with her magic, she called, Taka! The basilisk peered at her. You can speak to me through this creature. The creature barked. Dane said, She's a marmot. Her name is Quickmunch. Taka bowed. Forgive me, Quickmunch. I speak from ignorance, not contempt. Numer, Alana, and Raoul were looking from Marmot to Taka. Dane can speak to you even when she isn't doing it from her own body? Asked Numer. Taka listened to Dane and said, She has learned she has that ability only now. She asked me to say that if you do not tell her what she can do once the mages have left the castle, she will ask Quickmunch to bite you. Raoul snorted. The lioness covered a smile. Numer sighed. Patience is a virtue you should cultivate. Dane, not you. Quickmunch, is it? The marmot squeaked her reply. Of course, Numer said. Dane, remember what I told you of image magic? Yes, Dane told the basilisk, who translated for her. If you do something magical to an image of a person, it's the same as doing it to the person. That is true not only of people, Numer said. As it is impossible for Tristan and the others to walk around the valley to create the barrier, they must have enclosed a model of the valley itself. You must find that image in the castle. Once you have broken the circle of magic around it, the barrier will evaporate and we can enter the valley. Opals, the champion put in. Numer cracked his knuckles. Alana and I have assaulted the barrier. It continues to absorb, not reflect, our gifts. This shows power stones are being used to take magic and feed it into the working. Those stones will be embedded in the model of Dunlap Valley. You'll have to break them to break the circle. Dane said to Taka, I understand. Now what about the diversion? Taka repeated the question. The Knight Commander leaned forward. We think Tristan will send the other mages to deal with the disturbance at the forts, especially if the trouble is odd in any way. If it's serious, he'll probably go himself. Numer says Tristan never thinks underlings can handle real trouble without him. If both forts are attacked, there's a good chance the castle will be left unguarded. That ties up the Stormwings, maybe even the Hurrocks, Alana said. They're the quickest transport for the mages. Aikiju thinks she can raise her people. Aikiju nodded. If I say so, my kin will fight human masters. We make plenty of ruckus in north. I can cause trouble in the south, added Taka, but I will need help. He cocked his head to one side. I am too big a target even for humans to miss. Quickmunch scratched a flea, and Dane said, Taka, will you and Aikiju cross back to talk to everyone with me? Let's see what we can come up with, and tell them that Tate thinks he can get all the local people out of the castle. One thing, Numer said after Taka was done translating. Time is vital. To be at the southern barrier by sunset tomorrow, Tristan must leave the castle no later than noon, and there's a chance he will leave earlier. Whatever you do, it must be ready to go by tomorrow morning. Wait a moment, Dane cried, alarmed. What about the mercenaries who are supposed to come? That Captain Blackthorn and his men? When Taka passed this on, Sir Raoul grinned. We have 2 rider groups here, 16 irregulars and their ponies, plus a company of the own, 100 warriors. Yes, Blackthorn has 100 more men than I do, but if we're in Dunlath when he comes, the game is ours, not his. Blackthorn also hates to fight mages even more than he hates to work with them. If he even hears the Lana and Numa are waiting, I think he'll run like a rabbit. If that's all the questions, would you get moving? Numa hinted with awful patience. It's going to be a long day. Tristan's crew aren't the only ones who need to fly, Dane thought, resuming her human shape. I will too. The animals in the fort should be warned so they can escape somehow, and I can ask local animals to do some damage, like the pack's raids on the lumber camp. I hate to endanger them, but this is too important not to involve them. When Dane, Taka, and Aikiju explained the attack plan, their friends in the valley had plenty of ideas. The wolves chose to visit the northern fort to support the ogres and to attack the hated mines. Mora offered to set the southern fort afire if she got close to it, and promised to leave the gate alone so the horses could run. Tate wanted to go with her, and the dogs followed him. Rebel, who wished to help, agreed to carry the man and girl south. Kitten whistled a query. Dane smiled. You're with me, kid. I need you for locked doors. The dragon chuckled and sharpened her claws on a rock. Flicker said that he would go with Mora and Tate to the southern fort. He also advised Dane to recruit the valley squirrels. They could free the fort horses. They could also chew ropes, bowstrings, and the like once the sun was up. You think squirrels will want to get involved that much? The girl asked. Yes, replied Flicker. The walls in the forts are made of logs, aren't they? Plenty of my kindred lost homes and lives when those places were built, and the southerners have family by the river where they want to put the blood rain. Then I'll talk to them. What about the castle servants? Dane asked Tate. I'll give ye a note to my brother Parlin, the huntsman replied. He's the innkeeper. He'll see it's done, and done quiet. If we fight at dawn, I must go, Aikiju commented. I have to talk to ogres, give them hope for freedom. Talk might run all night. Let's take a bit more time, advised Tate. Give the squirrels a while with the sun to work in. If the mage hits the barricade hard, we'll all hear it. The 9th hour, say. Then Mara can start burning and the ogres can rise. Aikiju frowned. Big noise? Like being inside a bell? It is very hard to ignore, Taka remarked dryly. Ogres here. Ogres here good, 4 or 5 days ago. That's good signal. The basilisk went to tell the plan to Numer. While he was gone, Tate wrote his brother. When he was through, Dane summoned a crow and asked if she would carry the note to the inn. The crow, intrigued, accepted it and took flight. Taka returned. The 9th hour, 3 hours past dawn, he told them. Does everyone know what to do? Asked Mora, hands on hips. The dogs and wolves yapped. Flicker squeaked. The humans, Kitten, the ogre, and the basilisk nodded. Rebel and Cloud stamped. I'm off to the northern squirrels, then, Dane said. And everybody? They all looked at her. Be careful, she cautioned, eyes singing a little. Goddess bless us all. Goddess bless, whispered Mora and Tate. Silently, the animals called on their gods, and perhaps the immortals did the same. When the others had gone, Dane turned to Cloud. If I tie myself to you and make sure Kitten's secure in her back, can you carry us to the place we were last night? I don't want to linger here while I talk with the creatures in the north and south if I can help it. She studied her friend. Cloud looked fresh. If you can't, say so. I'll call another horse from the village if I must. And risk thief-catchers coming after you, retorted the pony. I think not. I can do this. You forget, I took my time walking here, and I've had plenty of rest and water and grazing. How will you be traveling? I thought to try that eagle again. So much the better. You won't weigh as much as you do now. I noticed the first thing that seems to change is your bones. If you have bird bones, you'll hardly weigh anything. Just like her. Cloud nodded to Kitten, who was tucking herself into Dane's pack. And make sure you bring that bow. Cloud, it'll be too much. Me and Kitten a crossbow? Don't be a fool, retorted the mare. You need a weapon. The girl sighed and got the rope. This is going to be fun. With the help of some birds and a marmot colony from inside the barrier, Dane tied herself, her crossbow, and Kitten to Cloud's back, with the knots in easy reach. When everything was secure, the pony set off at a walk. As Kitten chirped soothingly, Dane relaxed and listened for Hunt's song, the golden eagle who had taken her so far the day before. She found him nearly a mile away, about to leave his treetop nest. When she explained what she needed, he agreed to help. Quickly she slid into his mind, and they were off. Word of Flicker's adventures had gone from tree to tree in the days since its making of the Coldfang statue. The eagle, too, had been gossiping with other birds, and the song hollow bats had added their information. Dane was startled to find that the woods and rocky slopes all along the western side of the long lake buzzed, not only with her name, but with the names of her companions, humans, immortals, and animals. When she called from Hunt Song's mind to the squirrels near the North Fort, they asked what they could do to help in the destruction. Wood rats, overhearing what she told the squirrels, wanted jobs of their own. 3 flocks of starlings reminded her that they had come to her call before to drive off stormwings. Did she have more fun for them? With the wild beasts clamoring for Dane's attention, the domestic animals who lived in the fort were eager to listen to her. The dogs and cats left right away, not waiting for the next sunrise. The horses agreed to flee to the docks once Dane promised that the wolves and other hunters would leave them alone. As Hunt Song wheeled south, Dane saw the pack running single file down the trails, the steady pace eating up the miles between them and the fort. Aikiju, heavy legs pumping in an equally constant tempo, brought up the rear. When the eagle dropped down to eye level, the ogre realized who it must be and waved, grinning cheerfully. On their way to the southern fort, they found a trio of stormwings going from there to the castle. With a shiver, Dane saw Rakosh was one of them. "Have they ever bothered you?" she asked Hunt Song. The great bird glared at the approaching immortals. "Not in a general way," he replied, talons clenching. "We had a few misunderstandings when they first came here, until they learned the error of their ways." His wrath faded, and he added, "All the same, I shall give them a wide berth. They cut my mate to ribbons when she defended our nest." He drifted to one side. 2 stormwings flapped past, making rude noises. Only Rakosh changed course, to fly around Hunt Song in a wide circle. The other 2, a blonde female and the Kamiri male, came back and joined him. "They soar, don't they?" Rakosh asked them. Wheeling, always in the same place?" "Like toy kites and twice as wood sculled," joked the Khmer. "But now here's this one, flying in a straight line, going somewhere. You don't see prey when you go too fast, am I right?" "Get ready to drop," Dane warned Hunt Song. Rakosh spat, not looking to see if anyone was below. "This valley has a disease. When we're cute little animals, don't act like animals. Did I tell you about the squirrel?" "Only 1,000,000 times," said the Kamiri stormwing with a groan. Dane saw muscles bunch in Rakosh's neck. "Drop!" she cried. Hunt Song threw up his wings and dropped, hurtling earthward at terrifying speed. "Go! Go! Go!" screamed Rakosh. The female whooped, and steel-winged bodies followed Hunt Song down. Grimly Dane hung on, urging him into the trees that covered the road south. The eagle shot into the clear space between road and branches, scudding down the corridor they made. There was a scream and a crash. A stormwing had come to grief. Hunt Song risked a glance back. The female, scratched and bleeding, was trying to free herself from a chestnut. Seconds later, the Khmer came in view, fighting to pull out of his stoop before he slammed into the dirt. He failed. Relieved, Hunt Song looked forward. Rakosh awaited them ahead, where the trees fell briefly away from the road. "Land!" Dane urged. "I look stupid when I walk," complained the eagle as he obeyed. "Hopping like a sparrow is not eagle's work." "If you think you look stupid, imagine how he will look," Dane consoled him. Rakosh cursed and darted forward, flying low, trying to keep his great metal wings from clipping the earth and trees. Called from their nest, the squirrels leaped on him, biting with very sharp teeth. Rakosh screeched, trying to cover his eyes with his wings, and slammed into an elm. "Now run!" Dane told the squirrels. They obeyed. Hunt Song liked that advice too. He took off, flapping lazily past the spot where Rakosh fought the elm's entangling branches. The air filled with the stormwing's curses as Hunt Song broke free of the trees. With battle already joined, Dane had no trouble persuading the southern animals to do what they could to help Taka, Mora, Tate, and Flicker. The fort's animals, told what was going on, were as eager to stop the use of the blood rain as Dane was. "I think we're done," the girl told Hunt Song, feeling more tired than ever. "Let's go home. I'd return by myself, but I'm probably outside the range of my magic, and I don't know if I would make it." "Would you mind terribly if I left you inside your range and went back to that fort?" the eagle inquired. "I could help there. It would be a pleasure." Dane smiled and replied, "Of course." Flying low over the treetops, keeping away from the road, they passed Tate, Mora, Taka, and the others. Dane pointed out the basilisk. "Talk to him," she told Huntsong as they continued to head north. "He can translate for the two-leggers, and they should know of something you can do." The moment she felt the tug of attraction that was her true body, she wished the eagle good luck and separated from him. Instantly he turned south again as she slid into her human self. With regret she changed his far-sighted eyes to her own limited orbs, and his hollow, light bones into a human's heavier ones. Talons became feet, wings became arms. When she opened her eyes, all that remained was a layer of down between her clothes and skin. "I'm back," she muttered. "Huzzah." Cloud halted. "That crow came by," the mare said. "She wanted to tell you she dropped the note into the man's lap. He read it, and the last she saw of him he was on his way to the castle." Dane took a deep breath. "I hope he's as trustworthy as Tate says." The girl extracted herself and Kitten from the ropes that kept them on the pony's back. Then, with Dane afoot and Kitten walking or riding, they took the remainder of the day to approach the village, staying clear of outlying farms. They stopped as the shadows lengthened, so Dane could catch and cook some fish and Cloud would have a chance to graze. It was near dark when they moved on. Everywhere the people were talking. Dunlap's non-human residents had much to say about recent events. They spoke to kinfolk, distant relatives, even enemies, at a safe distance. Their opinions and questions were so loud that Dane wondered if the two-leggers didn't guess something was up. If they did, she saw no sign of it at the village. Hidden in the trees at the spot where she had left her bedroll and saddle, she watched the local people go about their end-of-day chores, then vanish into their homes. Lamps flared briefly in most houses, then went out. Farmers rose and went to bed with the sun. Only the inn and the castle windows stayed lit for any time after dark. Over the night, the Song Hollow Bats checked in, waking her with news of her friends. Aikiju had made it safely to the ogre dwellings around nightfall, starting a great deal of movement between buildings and a constant hum of ogre voices. The long lake pack busied itself among the mine wagons, working pins that held wheels to axles out of their settings with their teeth, and chewing the reins until only scraps held them together. In the south, wood rats laid dry twigs and grasses at the base of the wall and around all structures but the gate and the stables. Dogs howled incessantly outside, as little fires erupted in the commander's office, the mess, and the barracks, keeping the men up all night. At last, with only a few hours left until dawn, the activity ended. The people, and Dane, used the time in unbroken sleep. She awoke at dawn, aching from tense muscles. In contrast to the racket of the day before, the animals were quiet. Even the birds who greeted the sun were silent, awaiting events. From the trees Dane watched his castle servants cross the bridge in pairs, small groups, or alone, to enter the village. Parlin waited on the other side of the causeway, steering them to the inn. There were no soldiers to worry about. Yolaine relied on Tristan and the forts for protection. Dane called to the castle mice as the sky brightened. Soon they reported back to her. Only the nobles and Tristan remained there. The sun rose. In the north and in the south, squirrels were working hard to free the fort horses and do as much damage as possible. The soldiers were finding that their morning bread, tea, porridge, and cheese were inedible. The ogres were collecting weapons and moving their children to safety. Dane combed her hair and tied it back, then removed her clothes and shook them out before putting them back on. She ate cheese and stolen apples, groomed Cloud, and fed Kitten what remained of her previous night's fish. Last of all, she saddled the mare and tucked Kitten into her carry sack. Give them time, Tate had said, but she hadn't known the hours needed by her allies would strain her nerves so cruelly. Her tension was made worse by the fact that she heard little movement in the village. The cows had been milked before sunrise, livestock had been fed, but apart from that, the local two-leggers kept out of sight. It made her feel as if she had a ghost town at her back. At last she heard a sound like a huge bell hit from the inside, as loud here as it had been in the caves. It was followed by another sound from the south, a hollow thwap. Billows of smoke appeared on the lake's southern shore. She would have to ask Mora what on earth her friend had managed to blow up. Silver caught her eye from that direction. Stormwings flying hard and homing in on the castle. She noticed they were as soot-blackened as chimney sweeps as they vanished inside the curtain wall. She felt the Hurok trio come from the north. One bore a scroll in its left forepaw, and the gems in all their collars burned a bright yellow. They were in pain, clawing at the bands around their necks. Screaming in rage, the Huroks darted into the circle of the castle's wall. Checking the northern sky, she saw faint columns of smoke. Something was afire, but she couldn't tell what it was. She waited briefly, and the flyers reappeared. This time the Huroks had riders who controlled them with reins and bit. They fought these as they had the collars, with no success. 2 flew north. Dane shut her eyes and thought of Hunt's song, then opened them to an eagle's vision. The mages on the Hurok pair were Redford and Gissa. One Hurok tried to turn back, but Gissa was having none of it. Her mouth moved. A cloud of orange fire appeared on the immortal's rump. From the way he leaped forward, the fire must have hurt. She turned to check the others. The Stormwings bore 2 humans in rope slings. Tristan rode the Hurok. He too used fire to sting his mount forward. Dane made her eyes human again, then mounted Cloud. Now, she told her companions. The pony raced for the causeway. All down its length, past the dock where the nobles kept a few boats, and through the gate, Dane cringed, feeling exposed. Only when they were in the courtyard did she dare to sit up. There were no watchers on the castle walls, and the courtyard was empty. "Don't bother unsaddling me," Cloud told her when she dismounted. "Find what you came here for. I'll hide in the stables." "And rob every feed bag you see, right?" Dane whispered as she freed Kitten from her pack and put her down on the flagstones. Hanging the crossbow on her belt and the quiver over her shoulder, she trotted into the castle, the young dragon close behind. Blueness and Scrap met her in the great hall. They looked smaller this way, though Dane could see that Blueness was a creature of noble bulk, for a cat. Scrap was a dainty thing, and fascinated by Kitten. "Have you seen anything like this?" Dane asked the cats, picturing what she thought the model would look like. "No," said Blueness. "Scrap," he said imperiously when the youngster, sniffing Kitten's muzzle, didn't reply. "Answer the question." The young cat sneezed. "No," she replied, "but I have not seen all there is to see. We are not allowed in the mages' workrooms." "Show me where those workrooms are," Dane said. "Quickly, please." The cats led the way up a broad flight of stairs to a gallery on the 2nd floor and down a hallway. Kitten made as little noise as they did. Her talons, which Dane thought might click like a dog's, only made tiny scratching sounds. "The new humans sleep here," Blueness said, stopping at the end of a long corridor. "In those 2 set of rooms, and those 2. Dane tried one door. It was locked. "Kit, remember how you popped the lock at the inn?" The dragon nodded. "Give this a whirl, will you?" The dragon sat up on her hindquarters and eyed the lock with interest. She gave a soft trill, as she had at the inn. The lock shone gold for a moment, then went dull. Kitten made a clucking sound and trilled again, breaking the sound into a high note and a low one. The door swung open. "Can she teach me to do that?" asked Scrap as they entered the suite. "You do not need to know it," replied Blueness, disappearing into the bedroom. "You are too much of a pawful already." The model was not there, nor in the other 3 suites. Dane frowned as they finished their search. They had seen magical workrooms, but none had contained models. Also, she had seen nothing that looked like the room where she and Scrap had heard of blood rain. "Where are Tristan's rooms?" she asked. "The man with yellow magic." "They are near the ones of the human female who hates cats," replied Blueness. "This way." They returned to the gallery and circled its rim, then went down a short hall. Scrap's tail twitched angrily when they reached Tristan's door. It was shut. Dane grabbed the knob. It stung her hand, making her yelp. "Kit, this one's magic. Can you do anything?" Kitten stood on her hind feet and peered into the lock, then whistled 2 cheerful notes. Nothing happened. She scowled and whistled again, less cheerfully, more as a demand. Nothing happened. Dane was trying to decide what to do now when the dragon moved back and croaked. The lock popped from the wood to land at Dane's feet, smoking, and the door swung open. Kit muttered darkly and kicked the lock mechanism aside as she went in. Dane followed, trying not to laugh. "I wish I could do that," remarked Scrap wistfully as she and Blueness brought up the rear. Tristan's suite was bigger than those granted to his fellow mages, the furnishings more expensive. The central room was where Scrap had brought her last time. A study and a bedroom opened onto it. A dressing room and privy opened onto the bedroom. Unlike the other mages, Tristan did not have his own workroom. There was no sign of a model of the valley in his study. Indeed, except for a few scrying crystals and assorted books, They found none of the tools commonly used to work magic. "What are you doing here?" a shrill, furious voice demanded. Dane, Kitten, and the cats faced the unlocked door. Yolaine, in a thin nightdress covered by a lace robe, stood there. "Where is Tristan?" With a sneer, she added, "I should have guessed you'd be a thief." Dane put a hand on her bow. It was loaded, but she didn't want to kill Mora's sister. "I wouldn't call names if I was you," she retorted. Yolaine backed up. "Tyrell, Orem, Gemmis, to me! Orem, on the double!" Dane shook her head. "Yell all you like. They won't come. They're gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean it's at an end. The king knows what you're up to. The rebellion's uncovered. You'll never be queen." "Tristan!" called Yolaine. "Giza! Alaman!" "They have more important things to do right now," Dane told her. "The southern fort is burning. The ogres in the north are fighting the overseers. The mages went to deal with all that." "You..." Yolaine's face wasn't so attractive, twisted as it was in rage and hate. She turned and ran. Kitten whistled an inquiry. "We can't," Dane replied. "The model's the important thing right now." "Mice!" she called silently, and added a picture of the model. "Have you seen this? Will you look for it?" All over the castle the mice stopped to think and answer. Soon she knew none of them had seen it. "I don't understand," she muttered. "It's got to be somewhere. They haven't seen anything like this blood rain either, and I know that has to be cooked in something." "Did they mention the tower?" asked Blueness. "That is where all the mages gather to do their work." When he said tower, she remembered a column of greenish-brown smoke, and Hunsong's remark that he did not need to fly through death to know what it looked like. "That's a good question, Blueness. Mice, what about the tower?" Silence that reached through every nook and cranny of the huge building in which they stood was her answer. "Mice?" Her eye fell on Scrap. The young cat was backed into a corner, fur puffed out. She was trembling. "Scrap, what is it?" "I know what they mean," she whispered. "There is a lizard in the tower. A cold one. Colder than anything." When Scrap said lizard, the hair went up on the back of Dane's neck. It was the most sensible course if the mages kept precious secrets in the tower. Taka had said a cold fang would guard a thing until the end of time. Outside in the gallery, she heard Yolaine cry, "Belden, wake up!" There was no time to waste. "Scrap, how can I get into the tower?" The cats ran out of Tristan's rooms. Dane followed, taking her bow off her belt and checking the bolt already loaded. It was blunt, more to stun than to slay, though it might have killed Yolaine at close range. She switched it for a razor-pointed bolt. The tip hardened to punch through almost anything. She hoped it could put a hole in a cold fang. If it couldn't, she was in real trouble. Scrap led them to another gallery, then a spiral stair. They climbed it high above Tristan's suite, passing broad landings that led to other floors. At last there was a window. Looking out, Dane could see over the curtain wall. Here she felt the first touch of cold. "Blueness, Scrap, go back," she told them silently. "There's no sense in risking your lives." "But I want to," protested Scrap. She was so terrified that all her fur was puffed out and her ears lay flat. "Blueness, take her away," Dane ordered. "There's nothing you can do." "Come, Scrap," the older cat said. The fear that had puffed his tail up to bottle-brush size didn't show in his voice. "We can only get in the way." Dane knelt beside Kitten. "You don't have to come," she whispered. Kitten glared and tried to climb past her. Dane shook her head and went first. Thinking of Wisewing, she changed her ears to a bat's as they climbed, and listened to each scrap of sound. The cold thickened. Frost gleamed on the walls. Curls of icy mist drifted around the small windows. Dane shivered in her thin shirt, and her nose ran. The stair narrowed, the curves tightened. How was she going to get off a shot around a corner? The sound that made both ears twitch forward was a body, 31 feet ahead. Beaded hide brushed stone in a space much wider than the stair. Fear made Dane's chest tight. When she could bear no more, she yelled, "Cold Fang!" The echo hurt her ears. She made them human. "You'd best move. You're standing between me and where I want to go." Kitten whistled insults. She heard a soft thud, then the buzz of a cold fang rattle. Biting her lips so hard she drew blood, Dane raised her crossbow. "Don't let it catch your eye, Kit. That's how the other one almost got us. It came tail first, on all fours and low, not head first or standing as she expected. The sight of the rattle and tail confused her for a second too long. The immortal half lunged, half slid, its weight slamming into her. Dane loosed, but the bowl went high to shatter on the wall. With a yelp, the girl fell backward, the bow flying from her hand. Kitten squeezed to one side. The girl kept rolling down the steep risers, losing arrows from her quiver as she fell. She was lucky the turns in the stair were so close. She couldn't build up any speed. All the same, her rattling progress, bumping into walls and stairs, knocked her silly. Protecting her head and neck with her arms, she kept her body tucked into a round ball and prayed. Kitten, trying to keep away from the advancing Coldfang, scrambled to avoid getting caught under her friend. At the first landing they reached, Dane came to a halt. She grabbed the knob of a door leading from the stair and shoved. It opened on a hall furnished with suits of armor, old hangings, and wall decorations. Lunging to her feet, she ran in, the sound of talons on stone and that buzzing rattle loud in her ears.